person doesn't have to be good or holy or righteous to receive a miracle. Now, I know this empirically because I'm none of those things.
I hope that when, after my death, that I get to be a guardian angel to some youngster. Oh yeah, I believe in guardian angels.
The most remarkable thing that has happened in the study of prayer is simply the finding that it works.
The idea of miracles has permeated our popular culture for years. Hit songs, sports-themed movies, pop groups, even food products have all featured miracles in their titles or concepts. But what exactly is a miracle, and who believes in them? Hello, I'm Bryant Gumbel. By definition, miracles are wondrous, spectacular events attributed to the divine or the supernatural. We've all long been conditioned to be suspicious of unusual events with no apparent natural explanation. But there's no denying that thousands of people around the world believe that they or someone they know have experienced a miracle. The saying that everything happens for a reason is not a religious conviction, but a scientific determination based on logic and experience. Belief in miracles has for centuries been relegated to lunatics and religious fanatics. But not so very long ago, that all began to change. In 1991, Life magazine ran a cover story about miracles and became one of the first mainstream news sources in the United States to acknowledge the thousands of mysterious, miraculous phenomena that had been happening around the world. Since then, belief in miracles has become somewhat commonplace, and even some of the most skeptical non-believers are scratching their heads and asking, is this possible? Every day, incredible things occur all around us that some might call miracles. The wonder of childbirth, the rotation of the moon, a perfect rose. Still, people are always on the lookout for something larger to hold on to. In a world where everything seems upside down and bad news is common, the promise of a miracle offers a ray of hope. So we took a poll of everyday Americans and asked them what they think about miracles. The results may surprise you.
I believe in miracles.
People make me laugh. Of course miracles happen. Duh.
I believe in miracles.
Our entire universe is a miracle. Just look around you.
We conduct and analyze polls, and from the results of polling 50,000 Americans, there is definitely an overwhelming trend towards a strong belief in miracles. 84% of those polled said that God performs miracles. 79% believe the accounts of miracles in the Bible to be true and accurate. 72% feel that people who face death due to illness, disease, or natural disaster can be saved by a miracle. And 2/3 of Americans polled said they themselves have prayed for a miracle.
I believe in miracles.
I believe in miracles.
For me, God is real. Miracles happen every day.
The results are in, and as the stories you're about to see suggest, lots of people claim to have experienced miracles every day. Overcoming adversity is a common theme in heroic tales, but our first story deals with an ordinary man who overcame impossible odds to beat a crippling disease not by his own superhuman strength, but by a higher power beyond himself. Robert Skillman of Red Bluff, California, led a normal life until one day his regular exercise routine produced some abnormal results. As he started to cool down, Robert noticed a tingling in his hands. Initially, he thought nothing of it, but then the sensation spread to the rest of his body.
At first, when everything felt like it was going to sleep, I kept thinking it's going to wake up. Rubbing, it's going to wake up, and it didn't wake up. It went to sleep and died.
Robert underwent a series of tests. His x-rays revealed a grave abnormality, which was evaluated by his physician, Dr. Don Nelson.
I think anybody that looked at him would say, this man's in big, big trouble.
Robert had developed a condition which caused an overgrowth of bone and tissue in his vertebrae.
This white material, between the two lines of white material is the spinal cord. And then you get up to this point and the spinal cord appears to almost disappear. This is really very severe cervical stenosis.
In layman's terms, Robert's spinal cord was being crushed by abnormal growth, and by the time he was diagnosed, Robert had lost all feeling from the neck down. Recommended treatment included surgery to relieve pressure on the spinal cord, followed by intense physical therapy. Surgery was performed, but the limits of Robert's medical coverage prohibited the therapy. Sadly, without it, Robert would never fully regain the use of his body. Until this point, Robert had handled his misfortune well, but this unexpected turn was more than he could bear.
I raged against God for letting this happen. What have I done to deserve this? I raged against the state for not providing me physical therapy, at least giving me a hope of getting better.
Robert's anger became grief, then his grief became self-pity. He was on a downward spiral. He knew this pattern had to stop, so he decided to do the one thing he could still do without assistance. He prayed.
My prayers were, at first they were gripe sessions. I griped and complained. And finally, there was a point of complete surrender. I said, God, if this is your will, to let me lie here a vegetable for the rest of my life, if that is your will for me, then give me the strength to accept that. And if you cannot give me the strength to accept that, then I will not be satisfied unless you heal me.
Robert prayed for a miracle, as did his congregation and his pastor.
I knew that God could heal, and that physicians had treated, and he had very competent surgeons, but we would leave the healing part to God.
But even with all the prayers, Robert's condition continued to deteriorate.
For a period of time, it seemed to actually get worse after surgery rather than better. And then there was a rather sudden improvement about 6 months after surgery.
Robert's sudden improvement was, for him, nothing less than the miracle for which he and his church had prayed. For no earthly reason, and with no medical explanation, Robert showed signs of movement in his arms and legs. With great difficulty, he was soon able to stand, and over time, with some assistance, the former quadriplegic actually walked. Though not yet 100%, Robert made phenomenal progress, and together with his congregation, he thanked God for his miraculous recovery. But the best was yet to come. The following week, he returned to church, this time without his walker. Robert had been completely healed. His friends were astonished and claimed he was literally a walking miracle. Looking back on the experience, Robert claims to now understand why he was prohibited from receiving physical therapy.
God allowed me not to have it so that he could get the glory. I was denied physical therapy so that when I was completely restored, not just partially restored, completely restored, human beings, especially medical science, could not say that they had anything to do with the restorative process other than the initial stabilization.
Robert's amazing experience has taught him three things.
First of all, it has taught me that God is absolutely sovereign. He can do anything he wants whenever he wants to. Secondly, a person doesn't have to be good or holy or righteous to receive a miracle. Now, I know this empirically because I'm none of those things, and I got a miracle. The third thing I've learned is that when God does a miracle, when he directly intervenes in a person's life, it's for a reason.
The magnitude of Robert's apparent miracle is nothing less than extraordinary. For him, greater still is the ordinary way he obtained it, through prayer. For Robert, the power of prayer turned tragedy into triumph, and billions of believers all around the world believe their prayers are answered and that miracles are granted every day. They say that the bond between mother and child is the strongest bond of all, that not even distance or death can defeat its protective powers. There have been reports that as a boy is injured, his mother, though thousands of miles away, claims she simultaneously feels a sharp pain in her side, or she senses tragedy on a plane trip that her daughter is about to make and begs her not to fly. This awareness of family spirit is to some the most enduring and purest miracle of all. Some people believe that Chrissy Scubbish loved her son so much that not even death could keep her from safeguarding him. Chrissy's story begins with a dream her aunt had.
I dreamed of me sitting in the back seat of a car. It was night, and I could see a silhouette of a little boy standing in a seat. And I could see a woman driving, and all I could see out of the window was just light.
Karen says she had dreams before, which turned out to be precursors to family misfortune. Though she could not decipher this dream's exact meaning, she knew it did not bode well. 2 days later, she learned that her niece, Chrissy, and her little boy, Nick, were both missing.
When she didn't arrive where she was supposed to arrive, I figured, you know, she just changed her mind. So I didn't really get worried about it for a day or two, and then I did.
An investigation was initiated, but the authorities had little to go on. At one point, a man reported seeing unusual sights on Highway 50, but no one felt it was case-related until later.
He had a cellular phone, and he stopped right there, and from the spot called 911 because he seen a woman running backwards and forth on the side of the road there.
Meanwhile, Karen's concern for Chrissy grew.
I mean, I had no idea if she had been abducted, if she had been in a wreck. I didn't know why she was missing.
Karen knew her worrying was only wasting precious time, so she tried to focus her energy on pinpointing her niece's location.
When I would try to visualize where she could be, I could only see those exits out of Placerville.
Though the vision was not clear, Karen's desire to find Chrissy was. So she and her husband John set out on an 8-hour trek to Placerville, a town not far from where the woman was seen running on the road. At about the same time, Deborah Hoyt and her husband Nicholas were leaving Placerville. Like Chrissy, they were driving toward Nevada on Highway 50. Deborah was watching for deer, but instead was shocked by a startling discovery. Lying on the side of the road, she says, was the nude body of a woman.
She was really, really white. I kept remembering to myself that she must have been in the cold for a long time to be so white.
Horrified by the ghastly discovery, the Hoyts raced to a nearby telephone, where Deborah notified the California Highway Patrol.
She stood by and waited for them and went into the CHP vehicle with one of the CHP officers and searched the area. However, they were unable to find anything. They thought it was kind of strange because she was very sincere in what she believed she saw.
But what had Deborah seen? Though the officers conducted a thorough search, a body could not be found. Nor was there evidence that one had ever been there. Was Deborah mistaken? Was there really a nude woman on the road?
She was serious and believed that's what she had seen, and was still upset when they weren't able to find the body which she believed she'd seen.
As the officers investigated Deborah's claim, Karen says she had another premonition.
I just felt there was going to be something on the side of the road that would be a belonging, a toy, a ring. I didn't know. If Chris had been there, there was going to be something I was going to find.
Karen arrived in Placerville about dawn and notified the sheriff's department that she and her husband planned to search Highway 50 on foot to find whatever that something was. Deputy Strasser was on duty at the time. Seeing the determination in Karen's eyes, he decided it would be best if he accompanied her. Because it was now daylight, Deputy Strasser felt he should follow up on the Deborah Hoyt sighting. He drove to the spot where the nude woman had been reported When he got there, he didn't find the body. But he did find something that had definitely not been there the night before.
Near what we call Bullion Bend, east of Pollock Pines, I found a child's tennis shoe in the roadway.
The shoe was Nick's, and further investigation revealed the wreckage of a car.
The car was in pretty bad shape. It had hit a tree and kind of tumbled a little bit. And I found in the driver's seat, I found a white female.
It was Chrissy. Unfortunately, she had perished in the crash.
I looked over and I saw a young, nude boy basically lying in the passenger seat in a fetal position. And I believe both of them were killed as a result of the accident.
But Nick was alive, a fact many found amazing because the 3.5-year-old had been without food or water for over 5 days. Also during that time, the temperature had ranged from 40 degrees at night to over 100 degrees during the day. Authorities believe Nick had removed his clothing when the heat became too much for him. Suffering from hypothermia and severe dehydration, Nick was rushed to a nearby hospital.
The doctor said if Nick had been there another hour, 2 hours, that he wouldn't have. I mean, Nicky was close to death when he was found.
But thanks to Karen's apparent premonition and Deputy Strasser's good police work, Nick was found in time and recovered. But what of the alleged dead woman on the side of the road? Is she owed a debt of gratitude as well? Her presence did bring attention to the site, which in turn brought Nick's rescuers. Some have speculated that what Deborah saw was Chrissy Skubbish's ghost. But Chrissy's family rejects that theory.
I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in angels. And Chrissy felt very strongly that God appointed to each and every child of his a guardian angel. I mean, she was a strong believer in that. I feel that it was her or Nicky's guardian angel.
Nick's conversations since the accident seemed to confirm his grandmother's belief.
When a baby does say things they see, you have to listen. And he did say that he'd seen a naked woman. He said there was two. One lady was running on the road. He could see her running back and forth. And we asked, where was the other one? And he said she was standing next to the car door by him.
Was the naked woman Nick says he saw a guardian angel? If so, why was she so agitated?
Nicky was there. Nicky was still alive. God had to draw attention to that area some way.
Nick himself has talked of angels visiting him while he waited to be rescued.
He has told his grandmother that he's seen Jesus' angels and that they're very pretty.
And when asked how his shoe mysteriously appeared on the road, Nick gave an unexpected response.
I said, did it fall out of the car? And he said, I don't know. And then he said, maybe, his word, maybe Angel put it there. And I said, maybe, Nicky, maybe.
He'll tell you that my mommy died, and you tell him you know. And he said, but I died too, and I was with Jesus.
Although Nick now has a miraculous new life with his grandparents, they all believe that Chrissy will continue watching over him with a mother's love that will not die. Tragedy can strike any place, any time. No one can prepare for the horrors they may encounter in life. It's something most would rather not think about. One young lady had no time to think when confronted with catastrophe not once, but twice. Here's her courageous story of survival. One ordinary morning, an ordinary woman did the most extraordinary thing. As flames engulfed her neighbor's home, Ronelle Wallace confronted the enraging inferno head-on, while 70% of her body was still covered with unhealed burns from a previous fire she had survived just a few months before. It all started with a trip Ronelle and Terry Wallace had planned to try and patch up their broken marriage. With their own small aircraft, they could go anywhere, But before they left, Rennell said a little voice warned her not to go.
The feeling came so strong that I literally started to pull a pad out from behind me and started to write out my last will and testament.
I begged her not to go, but for some reason she had the feeling that she had to go, that it was something that she had to do.
When they were hit by a heavy storm, things started getting out of control.
We saw a little dirt road, and he says, "That's it, Rennell, we're going to make an emergency landing on that dirt road."
After a very shaky landing, Rennell and Terry were thankful to put their feet on solid ground. Rennell refused to get back in the aircraft again, but being in the middle of nowhere, Terry said they had no other option.
He says, "Rennell, there's an airport that's only 15 minutes by flight." He says, "What can happen in 15 minutes?"
Once in the air, Rennell could almost immediately see the dim outlines of the next town through the dense fog. She felt they were going to make it, until something unexpected happened.
Plane came into a mountain head-on, and we hit the mountain at 200 miles per hour. And parts of the plane started to fly everywhere. Sparks were coming up out of the plane. I saw a little cliff, and I knew that once we had nosed into the cliff, that it would be over. And just literally within moments of crashing into this large pile of rocks, we came to a dead halt. I was shocked. I said, "Oh my gosh, we just survived a plane crash." Because at that point, there was not a scratch or bruise on me. And Terry started screaming, "Get out, get out!" I quickly started to undo my seatbelt. As I did, I noticed the shoes on my feet started melting like butter off my feet.
The fuel inside the aircraft met with the flames outside.
It just was an instant inferno. It felt like someone took a blowtorch, lit it, and it just inflamed right in your face. And then just then, as you see a strong, muscular hand kind of like this, came out kind of from behind me like this. I just saw a little bit like that, and I just felt this. I just felt peace and tingling go from the center in both directions, and I felt I wasn't going to get hurt.
On the other side of the aircraft, Rennell was on fire.
The pain of the flames literally drove me down to my knees. I started to crawl across the wingtip as the flames were coming up along the side.
The rain finally doused the flames on Rennell's body.
As I sat on the rock, the smoke started to come up over my body, and there was a dead silence.
Their plane was now just a pile of mangled, melting metal, and Terry was nowhere in sight.
At that moment, I started to notice a movement inside the flame.
It was Terry, emerging from the flames towards Rennell.
As he came over to the end of the wingtip, he started to look in the fog, kind of bewildered. He says, "Rennell, where's the man that pulled me out?" I said, "Terry, there was no man."
No one had seen or heard the crash. The grueling 5-mile hike down a mountain through a dense forest began. They didn't know where they were going. Eventually, a truck driver noticed the horrifying sight beside the road.
For the first time, I saw myself in the mirror, and I started to scream. My head was swollen out to the distance of my shoulder. My face was black and charred.
The physical and emotional pain overwhelmed Rennell. Her body went into shock. She had a cardiac arrest.
And at the moment it became very black, I started to feel like my feet were going first into a very tight tunnel, and flashes of light started flashing by me at great speed.
Like others who have encountered near-death experiences, Rennell says she also had a vision that would force her to cling to whatever life was left in her.
I moved into the path and I saw a young man coming toward me. He was tall and he was handsome.
According to Rennell, this young man told her she had to return to Earth, that he needed her to be there in order for him to be born.
I think it's unimaginable to most of us. The hurt, the pain, they didn't think she would live.
Miraculously, she pulled through. Rennell and Terry reconciled, and their marriage was saved. After hundreds of operations and skin grafts, Rennell was finally on the road to a long and difficult recovery. Little did she know that she was about to face her biggest challenge yet.
I had just unwrapped all the wrappings off of my body, and they were on a pile on the floor, and Terry had just come out of the shower.
Terry noticed that the neighbor's house was on fire.
I ran to the front door. I started banging on it, and no one answered.
She ran inside the garage.
The smoke was very dense, and I started to choke.
Screaming was the only thing she could do to wake the family inside the burning house. Once everyone was safely outside, it was just a matter of minutes until the house collapsed. What possessed Rennell to endanger herself to save her neighbors? And how did she live through yet another life-threatening disaster?
I look at her every day and just wonder, how she's still here.
Rennell and Terry only had one more wish, to have more children.
They told me I'd never have kids again.
Once again, Rennell miraculously beat the odds. But shortly before giving birth, she claimed she had yet another vision.
As I was laying there on the bed, I saw an image of a young man standing next to me. And he said, "Thank you, Mom." And I said, "Thank you, Nathaniel." And that moment they came in and I had my son.
Celebrities aren't exempt from tragedy, nor apparently are they exempt from miracles, as our next incredible story illustrates. This real-life episode is as dramatic and thrilling as anything you've seen on TV. In 1979, actor Eric Estrada was living the Hollywood dream, a dream that began shortly after he was cast in Chips, a television series about the adventures of the California Highway Patrol. But it was because of this very dream that in an instant, Eric's world became a living nightmare. It began with the filming of a routine action scene.
It was a shot where me and Larry Wilcox, who was my partner on the show, and we're running out of a building, we jump on the bikes, and we're chasing a car.
But then something went terribly wrong, and instead of being seated on top of his motorcycle, Eric suddenly found himself pinned beneath his massive bike.
The first one to my side was Larry Wilcox.
It was obviously pretty serious, but I didn't know. And having been in the Marine Corps and Vietnam and all that stuff, I was pretty used to that kind of situation.
And he kept me from going into shock, because he kept me in the present. And he was quite helpful, because at that time, my lungs were punctured. And I had a big gash, but there was no blood coming out of my body. It was all internal bleeding, and it was filling up my lungs. So I had to really suck air on my own, and then the pain to boot.
And then the ambulance came, and I rode with him in the ambulance to the hospital. And then it got really serious. I'll never forget it. I could see in his eyes death. And I've seen it, I know what it looks like. There's a fear in their eyes that's beyond normal fear. It's almost like the spirit's leaving the body.
Though the threat of death loomed over him, Eric's will to live kept him conscious while the doctors raced to save his life.
They lay me down on a slab. They start cutting the clothes away, the boots, uniform off me.
I recall the priest coming in and giving him his last rites. They had anticipated that he had ruptured his aorta in his heart, so, it could be in a matter of seconds. And they had to do either open heart surgery immediately or he would be dead. But then some miracle happened. He didn't have to have open heart surgery.
Eric's other conditions, including collapsed lungs, numerous broken ribs, and several other internal injuries, required that he be transferred to a different hospital.
So then I was helicoptered from there to UCLA by the Sheriff's Department, and it was in the intensive care unit at UCLA where I had an out-of-body experience.
Eric felt that he was given a choice to stay outside of his body and die, or to return and recover.
I think what it did for me at the moment was I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like seeing myself like that. And I didn't want to be there. So I said, I'm getting out of here. And the next morning, I was taken out of intensive care.
Reflecting back on the incident, Eric feels he had help in making the decision to return to his body.
I think maybe I was grabbed by my guardian angel and was given a choice if I wanted to stay, not get back in the body. But I choose to get out of there.
Larry also feels Eric's recovery was divinely achieved.
I would have to say that it was a miracle, and that an intervening force greater than human beings, and in my lay opinion, that's God.
This life-saving and life-changing incident has given Eric a new perspective on celestial beings and the afterlife.
I hope that one, after my death, that I get to be a guardian angel to some youngster. Oh yeah, I believe in guardian angels.
For thousands of years, people have turned to prayer for all sorts of reasons, perhaps most fervently when they or someone they love is sick or injured. But are these prayers answered? It's hard to believe that the sick and infirm can actually be cured simply by asking God to single them out for a cure. What do the doctors say? Is there any scientific or medical proof that prayer heals? You're about to find out.
God definitely answers my prayers.
For me, every day I wake up is a
The
miracle.
Lord works in mysterious ways. I think that's kind of cool.
I'm a walking, talking miracle, and I'm as real as they come.
My son is living proof that miracles exist.
God definitely answers
answers
my prayers.
Never underestimate the power of prayer.
Millions of people all over the world believe in the power of prayer and flock in record-breaking numbers to crusades. Staging an event of this size is no easy task.
Over 10,000 churches have come together, pastors, for this wonderful crusade called the Festival of Blessings here in Bangalore, India.
By the end of this meeting crusade, we'll have probably fed over 100,000 meals provided by the ministry. Used up approximately 250,000 bottles of water.
We got over 2 million watts of lighting, and that's the size of a sizable small town. That's a pretty good amount of power.
You can see the blue choir seats in the choir stand behind the stage. This is nearly half a mile away from where I'm standing currently, but there's yet another half a mile of distance away from the stage where people could be standing for the services here in Bangalore. Now, what we've done is we've placed over 60 screens all over the field so that people that are here for the crusade will feel like they're watching the crusade on television.
While many claim to have been moved spiritually by attending, many more claim to actually have been healed during the service through the power of prayer.
In Little Rock, Arkansas, this is her brain today.
Thanks for the anointing. I give you the praise and the glory.
A miracle is when the power of God comes on a life and changes it. People believe in miracles, yet there's always a question. We're not accustomed to seeing a lame man walk, or a blind man see, or a deaf man hear.
She had the curve of the spine between the blades. But you see, Pastor, she can bend down. All the pain's gone. I was just checking her back. Look how straight it is. This is incredible. This was curved here since you're born, honey, since she was from birth.
What happened tonight?
I don't know. We started praying. You said something about somebody's spine. My pastor and I have been praying about it.
Who's your pastor?
Brother Stanley.
They carried her into the building today. Carried her? Physically, they carried her.
It looked like people, they're screaming and shouting. Who's that? Your church members.
While we were praying for her, we laid our hands upon her. She had her hands upon her. The power of God went through her hand and went through her body, and she is completely healed as well.
God, run. I can run! Run, go, go, go!
Although these healings can't be proven, it's hard to argue with the words of the people who claim to have been cured.
I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. I got to the point where I could barely eat because the pain was so severe. And of course, my body, the joints began to fuse. So the TV came on, there was Pastor Benny, and he was announcing that they were going to have a crusade coming to New Orleans. I knew that God used him in a mighty way, but I really wasn't that familiar with his ministry at that point. By the grace of God, I got to that crusade. I began to feel an intense heat come upon me. It's not a heat like when you're you know, outside. It's a heat from the inside. For the first time in all that time that I had suffered, I was pain-free.
1990, I was changing a filter out where I worked, and don't know what made me fall, but I fell head first on concrete and found out I had a broke back. And from that day, they put steel plates in my back and did bone fusion, removed some discs. Of course, I was unable to do anything other than just sit in a chair and lay in the bed and take pain pills and muscle relaxers. So finally, they put a epidural pump right here, the epidural pump in me that put Dilaudid into my spine 24 hours a day around the clock. And I had the pump in me for 10 years. I was healed from all the pain and all in 2001 at a Benny Hinn crusade in Atlanta, Georgia. And the power of God came on me, and I fell in the floor, literally shaking all over, just a great shaking in my body, couldn't stop shaking. And I felt as if something in my back was trying to get out, was leaving me.
He sat my husband down and told us both that what I had was Lou Gehrig's disease, that the prognosis was fatal, that there was no cure for it, that there was nothing that the medical world could do to take the disease away. If I had 2 years, it would be a long period of time because the disease was a very rapidly advancing form of ALS. When I saw that he was going to be holding a crusade in Pittsburgh, I really felt like I wanted to go. And at the moment that it happened, my body went into a back bend. Now, I was having trouble standing, so to have my body go over backwards and remain standing in itself was truly astounding. And about 20 minutes later, it began to relax, and I was able to settle into the chair. And my husband looked at me and he said, "I think something's happened." And I said, "I kind of think so too." He said, "Let's try and walk." So we stood up and we walked up those stairs that they had carried me down. And by the time I got to the bottom of the stairs, I took off on a dead run. I mean, I hadn't run in probably a year and a half. And I just took off down that hallway. My husband's going, "Where are you going?" I said, "I don't know, I don't care. I can do it, I can breathe, I can run."
But you don't have to take their word for it. Recently, scholars at some leading universities have gotten behind the healing power of prayer.
Even today on the mission field, all around the world there are people, the blind are being made to see, lame people are being made to walk. In the name of the risen Jesus, healing is taking place.
Patients who are terminally ill and there's no hope for them, bouncing back from the very jaws of death to perfect health. It happens.
The one question I think people ask me all the time, is this real? Is what you do real? Is what we see on television real? Because the human heart wants to believe. It's in our nature to question. But that's where God's power comes in.
And now some claim that medical science has proven that prayer can play a significant role in healing the sick. Meet former Chief of Staff at Medical City Dallas Hospital.
We've always said that there isn't any proof that prayer works. If you want to believe in prayer, you're on thin ice. There isn't any proof, and belief is just a matter of faith and fantasy. I think the proof that prayer works is one of the best-kept medical secrets going.
In his book, Dr. Dossi outlines over 130 studies which he says prove there is a power in prayer. But the doctor wasn't always a believer.
When I went to medical school, I became your self-respecting agnostic, and I stayed that way for many, many years. And I, like all well-trained physicians who believed in the power of science and objectivity, knew that the only way to solve medical problems was through drugs and surgical procedures and through things that you could basically hold in your hand and see.
But later, Dr. Dossi was forced to question his steadfast convictions.
I will never forget an incident that happened to me the first year I was in medical practice, which really knocked my socks off. This patient of mine was dying from lung cancer. He refused all treatment. The only thing that he got in terms of therapy was that his congregation from the church ringed his bedside during all visiting hours and prayed nonstop for the man. I sent him home to die because he didn't choose to have any therapy.
1 year later, Dr. Dossi learned the man was back at the hospital with a bad case of the flu. Amazed the patient had not succumbed to his disease, Dossi, with great curiosity, examined the man's current x-rays.
The radiologist report said, in the intervening 12 months, this man has had a dramatic response to therapy. The chest x-ray is now normal. The radiologist assumed that the man had had chemotherapy or some medication which made this cancer go away. I knew that the only therapy that the man had was prayer. I didn't want anything to do with this prayer business. I really got involved in it, sort of kicking and screaming against my better medical judgment, and the thing that helped me more than anything was science.
Ironically, the spiritual answers for which Dr. Dossi was searching lay amongst the same scientific journals which initially caused him to reject prayer.
I went to a lot of trouble and work to uncover these studies, and I was stunned by the depth and the breadth of this evidence. The most famous study involving prayer has gone on at San Francisco General Hospital.
The study involved 393 people who'd all suffered heart attacks. Patients were given comparable state-of-the-art care, but some also received care of a supernatural nature.
Half of these people, unknown to them, have their first names farmed out to various prayer groups around the country who pray for them. And when the results were in, it looked as if the prayed for group had been given some sort of special advantage.
Special indeed, because those patients who had been prayed for were incredibly 3 times less likely to develop complications, 5 times less likely to require antibiotics, and had a considerably higher survival rate than those patients who were not remembered in prayer.
The most remarkable thing that has happened in the study of prayer is simply the finding that it works. That's got to be major medical news in this century.
Logical people need an explanation for these miraculous healings. How does prayer work?
I think sooner or later we probably will have a scientific explanation for prayer, but it's only fair to say we don't have one yet. We often have had therapies in medicine which we used before we knew how they worked. Penicillin is a great example. When penicillin was discovered, we didn't have a clue how it worked, but we knew that it worked. And we didn't let the lack of a theory stand in our way of using it. It's the same with prayer.
It's said that there are basically 2 kinds of prayers: prayers for oneself and prayers for others. We asked Dr. Dossi if he became ill, which method he would choose.
Since we know they both work, if I were sick, I would use both. And I personally would get on as many prayer lists as I could.
Dr. Dossi isn't the only practitioner who has accepted this alternative form of healing.
A recent survey has shown that 43% of physicians in the United States actually pray for their patients. Now, most of my colleagues wouldn't be caught dead praying in public. My hunch is that when the information supporting it scientifically becomes better known, it will be widely used and probably publicly by physicians. And as they do so, medicine as we know it will never be the same.
Will this earth-shaking information become accepted and utilized publicly by the medical community, as Dr. Dossi surmises? With many physicians already giving credence to this supernatural power as a healing tool, it's possible that doctors, in addition to medication, will also one day prescribe prayer, the ultimate miracle cure. Not all miracles are related to religion. Miracles can come from the most unexpected places and take the most unexpected forms, like in our next story. For most children, the process of growing up is a difficult challenge filled with its share of hardship and heartache. But for children burdened with disabilities, the process is a battle. Fortunately, today these young warriors are not alone. There's an outlet to help turn their tragedy into triumph and give them a sporting chance. In 1981, Mark and Margaret Silva were expecting a child. When Margaret gave birth, she was told that her daughter, Brandy, had only a 50-50 chance of survival. And if Brandy did pull through, she would be severely handicapped.
The top neurologist on the West Coast at 4 months gave us the prognosis of take her home and love her. She will never get out of her crib. She'll never walk. She'll never talk. She'll never function. And when she gets too big to care for, then put her in an institution.
Brandy was born with microcephaly, which means her brain was smaller than average. She was legally blind, legally deaf. She had psychomotor retardation and severe weakness on her right side. The possibility of Brandy ever doing anything normal was virtually non-existent. There was one possibility the doctors hadn't counted on: a miracle. 14 years have passed since Brandy's first prognosis, and not only has she survived, she's become a champion athlete in the Special Olympics. Mrs. Silva attributes her daughter's remarkable recovery to divine intervention and to Brandy's involvement in the Special Olympics organization.
With 90% of the Lord's help and 10% of hard work and dedication by her family and friends, she's gone from this zucchini, and I quote zucchini from the neurologist when she was 4 months old, to an athlete who does gymnastics.
Debbie Hicks has been coaching Brandy for 4 years now and has seen her grow tremendously during that time.
When I first started coaching Brandy, she was quiet. She did not know what a balance beam was. She didn't know what uneven bars were. She didn't know what a vault was. She didn't know anything about gymnastics. Basically, she could not walk a straight line.
But now Brandy not only competes in multiple gymnastics events, she participates in several other sports as well. In 1994, she was selected as Female Athlete of the Year and received an award from Special Olympics Chairman Rafer Johnson. Another young man who has benefited greatly from the Special Olympics is Doug Hedenberg. Born with Down syndrome, Doug is a gold medal basketball star. He has won additional gold medals in powerlifting, softball, track and field, and floor hockey. But Doug wasn't always such an all-around athlete.
For a number of years when he was smaller and younger, he wasn't particularly interested, but he made friends with other kids and they got him interested. And he's been very pleased that he has done so ever since.
I like his basketball, put me in first place. And I got to go to prove it. That's right here.
Head basketball coach Chris Utz can testify to Doug's impressive progress since becoming involved in the Special Olympics.
He is a type of person that learns from every experience that he does, every tournament that he goes to. He's a leader, and he's grown and developed along with his teammates.
Founded by Eunice Kennedy Shriver, the Special Olympics gives children and young adults who are mentally challenged an arena in which to develop physical fitness, demonstrate courage, and experience joy.
It allows the kids to have an outlet and an opportunity for success in sports. It allows them to have the same type of experiences that other kids get outside through Little League and through other organized athletic events. And the Special Olympics offers them the same opportunities.
Mrs. Silva believes the Special Olympics have done more than help Brandy physically. She says they've also given her daughter a zest for life.
I don't care if she gets first or eighth. When she goes out and she does her best and she has a good time and she comes off that apparatus and she's full of smiles and happiness, that's the best part.
One of the medals Brandy and the team won this year was for her floor exercises. Doug and his teammates took the silver in basketball. But ultimately, these most special athletes leave with more than simply medallions on chains. They take with them the love, the hope, and the sense of acceptance that can simply be described as miraculous. We have heard some amazing stories and have seen some amazing sights. But just because these people enjoyed a happy ending doesn't mean they necessarily experienced a miracle. Or does it? Do miracles really happen in real life? Can prayer actually cure someone from illness or injury? And if miracles do really exist, do they only happen to those who believe in them? Belief in miracles requires a leap of faith, literally, and you'll have to decide that for yourself. It's difficult not to be moved by these stories, and you can't ignore the sheer number of believers. But do you dare believe? I'm Bryant Gumbel. Thank you for watching.